Have you ever wondered how many life-changing moments are missed simply because people stay silent? Most of us like to believe we'd speak up when something feels wrong. But when there's money involved, powerful people in the room, and the risk of losing everything, courage suddenly becomes much harder. This is the story of a struggling single father, a billionaire on the verge of making a disastrous mistake, and one sentence that changed both of their lives forever. Because sometimes the most important voice in the room comes from the person nobody notices. 34-year-old. Ryan Carter worked as a waiter at one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. From the outside, customers saw a polite server carrying trays and refilling glasses. What they didn't see was the life he returned to every night. Ryan was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, alone. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a sudden illness. Since then, every bill, every responsibility, and every worry rested on his shoulders. His days started before sunrise, getting Sophie ready for school, preparing lunches, working double shifts, then returning home exhausted but determined to be the father she deserved. Money was always tight. Some months he barely covered rent. Other months he chose which bills could wait. Yet despite everything, Ryan rarely complained, because every sacrifice felt worth it when Sophie smiled. What few people knew was that Ryan spoke 4 languages fluently. His mother had immigrated from South Korea. His father had been a language professor. Growing up, Ryan developed a gift for languages. He spoke English, Korean, Mandarin, and Japanese. Years earlier, he had dreamed of becoming an international business consultant. But after losing his wife and becoming a full-time parent, survival became more important than ambition. So he took the restaurant job and quietly set his dreams aside. One Thursday evening, the restaurant buzzed with unusual energy. Managers moved nervously. Private. Security stood near entrances. Staff received special instructions. High-profile guest was arriving. His name was Victor Langford, a 70-year-old billionaire investor known throughout the business world. Victor had built a fortune worth billions through technology and international investments. Tonight, he was meeting representatives from a rapidly growing Asian manufacturing company. Rumor had it the deal being discussed was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The restaurant's private dining room had been reserved exclusively for them. Ryan was assigned to serve the table. As guests arrived, everything appeared normal. Executives exchanged handshakes, lawyers reviewed documents, assistants organized folders, and seated beside Victor was a translator named Daniel Cho. Daniel had worked with Victor for nearly 2 years and was considered completely trustworthy. The meeting began. Ryan quietly moved around, the room serving drinks and appetizers. At first, he paid little attention, but after about 20 minutes, something caught his ear. One of the foreign executives spoke in Mandarin. Ryan understood every word. The executive's statement was simple. He explained that their company still faced unresolved production delays that could affect future contracts. But when Daniel translated the statement into English, he said something entirely different. He claimed the executive was reporting that production was running ahead of schedule. Ryan paused. Maybe he misunderstood. Maybe there was context he missed. So he continued working. A few minutes later, another executive spoke. Again, Ryan listened carefully. The man openly discussed financial risks and recent losses. But Daniel translated the comments as Positive growth projections. Ryan's stomach tightened. This wasn't a mistake. The translations were completely different. He glanced toward Victor. The billionaire nodded confidently, unaware of what was happening. The meeting continued. Every few minutes, Daniel altered information. Some changes were subtle, others were enormous. Each mistranslation painted the company in a far more favorable light. Ryan felt increasingly uneasy. Why would someone do this? Then he noticed something even stranger. Daniel occasionally exchanged quick glances with one of the visiting executives. The looks lasted only seconds, but they felt deliberate, secretive. Suddenly, a terrible possibility formed in Ryan's mind. The translator wasn't making mistakes. He was helping deceive Victor. Ryan's pulse accelerated. What should he do? If he stayed silent, Victor could lose millions. Maybe more. But if he interrupted, nobody would believe him. After all, who was he? A waiter. The translator was a respected professional. The room was filled with executives, attorneys, and security personnel. Ryan imagined being fired, on the spot. The restaurant couldn't afford embarrassment. Neither. Could he? Sophie depended on his paycheck. The meeting moved toward its conclusion. Contracts appeared. Lawyers, organized final documents, pens, were placed on the table. Victor seemed ready to sign. Ryan felt trapped. Every instinct told him to stay quiet. Protect his job. Protect his daughter. Protect his future. But another voice inside him refused to let it go. The same voice. His father used to talk about the voice that asks, what kind of person you become when you witness wrong and do nothing. Victor reached for the pen. Ryan took a deep breath. Then he stepped forward. The words escaped before fear could stop him. Sir, your translator is lying. The room froze. Silence crashed over the table. Every head turned toward him. Victor slowly lowered the pen. Daniel's face instantly lost color. What did you say? Victor asked. Ryan's heart pounded. Security immediately moved closer. Restaurant. Managers looked horrified, but Ryan couldn't stop now. I speak Mandarin, he said. The information you've been receiving isn't what they're actually saying. Shock spread across the room. Daniel quickly laughed. This is ridiculous, but his confidence seemed forced. Victor stared at both. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of dismissing Ryan, he asked a simple question. Can you prove it? Ryan nodded. Victor turned to one of the visiting executives. Please repeat your last statement. The executive looked confused but complied. He spoke slowly in Mandarin. Ryan translated. Then Daniel translated. The room instantly noticed the difference. The two versions weren't remotely similar. Victor's expression darkened. Another executive was asked to speak. Again, Ryan translated. Again. Daniel's version differed dramatically. The truth became impossible to ignore. Security escorted Daniel from the room. As they did, investigators began examining emails and communications. What they discovered over the following days shocked everyone. Daniel had secretly accepted payments from individuals connected to the company. His job was simple: manipulate translations, conceal risks, help secure the deal. In return, he would receive a percentage of future profits. The deception had been carefully planned for months. Had Ryan remained silent, Victor likely would have signed a disastrous agreement, one that could have cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The story spread quickly through business circles. News outlets covered the incident. Industry leaders praised the waiter, who exposed the fraud. But Ryan expected little to change in his own life. After all, he still had rent due, he still had a daughter to raise, and courage doesn't automatically solve financial problems. 3 days later, Ryan received an unexpected phone call. Victor Langford wanted to meet him. Nervously, Ryan accepted. When he arrived at Victor's office, the billionaire greeted him warmly. There were no reporters, no cameras, just a private conversation. Victor thanked him personally. Then he asked a question. "Why did you risk everything?" Ryan thought carefully. Finally, he answered honestly. "Because I'd want someone to do the same for me." Victor smiled. The answer clearly meant something to him. Then he asked about Ryan's background, his languages, his education, his life. The more Ryan spoke, the more surprised Victor became. This wasn't simply a waiter. This was a talented man whose dreams had been interrupted by tragedy and responsibility. A week later, Victor made another offer, one that completely stunned Ryan. He offered him a position within one of his international companies, not as a waiter, not as an assistant, but as a language and cultural consultant. The salary was more than Ryan had ever imagined earning. The benefits included educational opportunities and flexible scheduling for his daughter. At first, Ryan thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Victor believed talent deserved opportunity, and he believed character mattered even more. Over the next year, Ryan's life transformed. The financial pressure eased. Sophie moved into a safer neighborhood. Opportunities that once felt impossible suddenly became real. Yet the greatest change wasn't the money, it was confidence. For the first time since losing his wife, Ryan felt he was building a future instead of merely surviving. One evening, months later, Sophie asked him a question during dinner. "Dad, were you scared when you spoke up?" Ryan smiled. "Very scared." She looked surprised. "Then why did you do it?" Ryan thought about that moment in the restaurant. The silence, the risk, the fear. Then he answered, "Because doing the right thing isn't about not being afraid. It's about deciding something else is more important than your fear." Sophie nodded thoughtfully, and in that moment, Ryan realized she had learned something far more valuable than anything money could buy. Years later, Victor would still tell the story at business conferences, not about contracts or investments, but about the waiter who saved him from making the biggest mistake of his career, because the lesson wasn't really about business. It was about listening, about humility, about recognizing that wisdom can come from unexpected places, and perhaps most importantly, about understanding that integrity isn't measured by job titles. It's measured by choices. So if you're watching this today, remember this. The person with the least power in the room may sometimes hold the most important truth. Never underestimate your ability to make a difference. Never assume your voice doesn't matter, and never forget that courage often appears in ordinary people facing extraordinary moments. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories about courage, kindness, and life-changing human connections. And remember, heroes don't always wear suits. Sometimes they carry food trays and choose to speak when everyone else stays silent.